you could do this. And I chose Red River because it was 2.5 years and you got a co-op. And I got hired at a co-op, and then I got hired on permanently after at a company in Winnipeg called Northfield IT. And I've been working there since. And I guess I graduated in 2018, so I've been working full-time since then.
Sorry, I'm not sure if you guys can see. I'm struggling with the recording right now. I'm sorry if I'm distracting. That's popping up on everyone's screen. So while I fill with that, I have a question that was submitted by one of our members. He was curious about recruiters. Have you ever dealt with any recruiters in your professional life in any way so far?
Yes and no. I mean, I have LinkedIn, and they do just randomly pop up on there. But I've been quite content where I'm working and with what I'm doing that I've always had the response of, sorry, not interested. Thanks for reaching out. I don't know of anyone who has specifically been recruited by a recruiter, but if someone reached out to you and you were looking for a job, there would be like no reason not to see them through for what they're doing. But I haven't personally, because I got hired like right out of school, that I don't have a lot of experience with recruiters.
Now, did you say Northfield was your co-op position as well? Okay, yep. So you've been with them the whole time then, since before 2018, right?
Yeah.
What's the corporate culture there like? Because I know we've heard a lot about Northfield. They're a big employer for IT, and we're probably going to see some other graduates and co-op students looking at them in the future. Can you talk a little about the corporate culture there?
It's pretty awesome. It's pretty relaxed. Like even when we were still in the office, it was pretty relaxed. No dress code, none of that sort of thing. You're very much independent. So if you can't get your work done, you need to tell someone and you need to ask for help. It's not a lot of like hand holding and, hey, reminder, here's a deadline. You're an adult, act like one. If you're going to be late, make up some time. It's very flexible as long as you're getting your work done. And everyone's super friendly. We would have like Rib Fest and Burger Fest and all sorts of great events in the pre-plague times. There was like video games in the kitchen. We worked for a large sports organization. So when there's like, you have to be on during certain sports events, they feed you and stuff like that. It's pretty relaxed and pretty good. And now that we're working from home, we're on Zoom calls all the time. We're on Slack all the time. It's pretty good, and everyone's really friendly. So if you got a question, you just reach out, and if someone doesn't know, they will usually know the person you need to ask and help you out. And sometimes they'll jump in too because they don't know. So I'd say it's pretty good. I really enjoy it, especially coming from my previous life where I was working in a very institutionalized, structured work environment at Great West Life where, you need to clock in and out for breaks. And if you were 1 minute late, you needed to make up 15 minutes after work. And you couldn't leave in the middle of the day if you had a doctor's appointment and stuff like that. Where Northfield knows life happens and helps you out through that. So I really enjoy working there.
Well, thank you. Morgan has a question here. Red River College is coming out with a new data science and machine learning program. Ooh. I was just curious as to your thoughts on these areas of specialization. Is it worth getting into?
Yes. Do I deal with that stuff much where I work now? No. Do I know people who do deal with that stuff? Yes. And data drives the world. You've got a Facebook account. They are harvesting all of your information and they're using it to show you advertisements that are targeted to you. So if you know how to manipulate the data, you become invaluable to someone who is looking to capitalize on that. So that's really exciting that they're doing that. And I think that would be very much worth going into.
Yeah, I sat in on that info session. It was about a month ago, and something I think is interesting for all of us, because it's not a, you can go into that program without any previous experience. You don't need to be a BIT or BTM student.
Okay.
But what they are offering is what they call micro credentials. So if you're interested in one or two courses, like you don't need to take programming 1 and learn how to code in Java all over again. But if
Right.
you're interested in a few targeted classes, so I think that would be interesting for graduates of BIT or people working through it in the summer.
Yeah.
Anyways, Justin
yeah.
here has a question. What are some trends affecting the IT industry? I know that Microsoft spent $200 million on data centers since Azure sales skyrocketed.
Yeah, definitely the cloud. The cloud. It's a thing. Where I work, it's a lot of like in-house servers, but we're slowly starting to explore more of the cloud. You do have it does make stuff easier. You don't have to pay an exorbitant, warehousing fee. You don't have to pay for the electricity to run these things. But the more you look into it, also individual companies don't trust third-party providers to house their information. So there are lots of actually data centers in Winnipeg in these industrial parks that nobody knows about. So that's an interesting one. The whole switch to working from home is, I don't know how it's going to play out, but I think it's going to impact how everyone works and what becomes more important. Having cloud access will be much easier working from home for a lot of companies the way they're currently set up. So something like that would have a big impact as an incoming trend. I don't know. Yeah, that's a hard one. The whole switching to work from home has really changed how people interact with each other and with the technology. So I'm not entirely sure how things are going to go from here on out.
Oh, absolutely, it's tough to say. A question here from Rob. Are there any technologies you can recommend students familiarize themselves with while working on personal projects? Examples like Docker, Postman, etc.
Yes. So again, it's going to depend on the kind of job that you get, what you're going to need to focus on, like in the future. But I also don't know if Red River restructured at all, but I know that something like GitHub, we didn't cover until the final term. Well, I use that every day in my co-op. So I came back knowing how to use it, but it would have been great to know going in. So maybe they've switched that up and you get to learn Git beforehand. But number one, knowing source control is super important. And I would also say get yourself some Raspberry Pis and just play with everything. A lot of places, if you are going to be working with the cloud, set up. There's usually student deals. You can get AWS student deals. You can get Azure student deals and stuff like that. Red River might have some partnership that you can get student discounts on stuff. We started using something called Kubernetes where I work. You can set up a tiny cluster even on your laptop using VirtualBox, and that's super useful because a lot of what happens in school is they teach you how to write the program, but they don't necessarily show you how to run the program. And so looking into how to run your program is super useful because you don't know where you're going to end up necessarily. You might just be a guy who sits in a corner or a girl who sits in a corner and you just take tickets and you fix 3 lines of code and that's what you do all day long. But you might end up in a place that's smaller and you have to know everything from your initial creating of the files all the way to deploying it to the web so that people can actually use your product. And yeah, Docker is useful, Kubernetes, virtual machines, like you create them in some of your classes, but you can download sort of pre-set up virtual machines to play with anything. And then if you mess something up in there, it's fine. Just destroy it, rebuild it, and you're fine. You're not affecting your like main computer. I do that sometimes because we use a lot of open source stuff at work. So I'll go on GitHub, find a thing, be like, does this even work? I'll just create a virtual machine, throw it in there. I'm not affecting production environments or anything like that. It's safe. Yeah, but I would say things like Docker, Kubernetes, familiarize yourself with any virtual machine stuff. Depending where you end up, you might need to know about deploy pipelines, which is how your code gets from your computer or GitHub or your source control live. So there's stuff like Jenkins, Circle CI, Travis. And yeah, having a Raspberry Pi to play on too is just super, super awesome. Oh, and as for languages, Golang is apparently hot right now. So I'm currently trying to figure that one out. So I will throw that one out there as if you can say you know a little bit of Golang, that might impress some people.
That's a good tip. I'll have to look into that one. Well, kind of speaking about doing some outside learning, Dan here asked, currently I am doing some courses at Code Academy to learn new programming languages and frameworks. At the end of each course, I earn a certificate. How much value does a Code Academy certificate hold compared to like an actual project?
Ooh, that's a great question, and I don't fully know the answer. The certificate definitely shows you can learn, but a project shows you can implement what you've learned. So if you complete your certificate and then go build something on your own or tweak something that someone else has built to make it your own or add features, that shows that you like have solidified the knowledge that you have gained. Right? You go to class and you learn something, and then you do an assignment to show that you understand what you've learned. So in that sense, it's the same in the real world. If you've got a little certificate, that's great. But if you can be like, hey, so I took this course and then I built this chatbot, it's like, wow, right on. That shows a whole different level of initiative and skill, I'd say.
Question here from Khan. Can you share some experiences about switching your career path? How did you apply your previous experiences into your new job?
Ooh. Well, the fun thing about sociology is you're studying people and the way they socially interact. So the greatest asset of my previous degree has been the people aspect. And I had, before we started the session here, I was talking about all the presentations you have to do in the final term in one of the business courses. And they get annoying because you're doing all this like thinking work and then you got to go up there and present. And like, honestly, I have a huge anxiety and huge fear getting up in front of people, but I push myself to do it because that's the only way to get over it. So I found that a lot of my previous experience has helped me with the people aspect of the industry. I can come and do something like this, even though it makes me nervous, but I've had experiences that lead to being able to deal with different types of people. I've had experiences where problem solving, even like, no matter what you've done in your past, you have picked up skills to problem solve. So coding is just a tool you use to problem solve, right? I need this, I can write a program to do it. So Bit gave me the tools to be able to apply my problem solving skills to a new area of life, basically. Yeah, but I'd say the thing that my past experiences have definitely given me a big boost in the dealing with people aspect.
Yeah, it's funny. They really hammer that in the starting of Bit and IBIT at the importance of soft skills, and you don't think about them. But you know, there's so many different classes. I mean, we have professional development, 4 different classes throughout the 5 terms.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And they didn't have that professional development when I went through, so that's a good one to have too. Because do you get like a portfolio by the end or something like that too, or?
Yeah, they have something called ePortfolio. I think it's hosted on through the Learn system
Okay.
they use, the Learn shell, and it's a lot of stuff: speaking, cover letter writing, resume writing, but yeah, soft skills. And that's a thing I never thought about before coming to this program, and I've had so many people, instructors, and people like you, just kind of hammering. You need to be able to talk. You need to
Yeah,
be able
and
to be
it's hard.
thoughtful, and yeah.
It's hard, and my previous job at Great West Life, I started with what I called the elevator conversation because I was very shy and I was afraid of people. But you know that you've got like max. I think there was 10 or 11 floors in the building, so I'm like, okay, that's like under a minute. And in under a minute, can you do the pleasantries? The hey, how's it going? Good. How are you? Not bad. Oh, you got a dog? Yeah. Okay. Cool. You know, you just do the conversations that mean nothing, but it gets you talking. And you know that you're not stuck in that conversation when it gets awkward, unless the elevator were to break down. But let's not think about that. So you know you've just got that brief window, and you're going to be able to get in and out of the situation. And that is a skill that I've sort of transferred. You know, you might not really care what Bob is doing over at the water cooler, but you'll be able to go, hey, Bob, how's it going? Great. You? Great. You know, and it develops a rapport so that when you need help from Bob, he knows who you are and he knows you're friendly and he's going to be willing to help you out.
I just realized someone's going to be very happy we have a professional development instructor in this meeting, so their ears are probably burning at this topic. A question here from Justin. I'll probably look into Raspberry Pis, but what are some of your favorite tech products, and what are some of your least favorite tech products?
Oh, um, I've started. At first, I was a very tinfoil hat person. I didn't want any like smart home stuff, and then I started getting some like Wi-Fi plugs and stuff like that. And I gotta say that with like Google routines, how I can say good morning, it turns on my lights and it starts my coffee maker for me. I mean, it's one of my favorite things. It's simple, but it's like one of my favorite things. Um, I don't I don't know what my least favorite are. Um, I also recently switched internet providers, and the modem they give you is kind of terrible. It's only got two Ethernet ports in it, and that means I can't plug in anything. Definitely can't plug in computer and a console at the same time, plus another computer. Like, yeah. So I looked into Ubiquity stuff, and I've very slowly started doing some networking switch and access point stuff in my house to improve the Wi-Fi and that sort of thing, and allow myself to run actual cables to my computer.
I would absolutely love if I ever built a house, I would wire everything. Every room would have HDMI cables and Ethernet
Yeah.
cables. Because yeah, I'm able to hardwire some things in my house, and it's such a dream. And then,
Yeah.
but it's impossible for a lot of places.
I've got a drywall ceiling, so if I'm gonna like actually run wires properly and drop them, like do drops everywhere, it's gonna be a mess and it's gonna be more work than I want. So, if you're building a house, definitely get your Ethernet drops in every room. Think about, are you gonna need Wi-Fi in the garage? Yeah, okay. Think about, are you gonna want to be able to, run audio from every room? A coworker built a house last year, and yeah, he has all sorts of little switches and Googles and things throughout his house, so that he can say in his office, be like, "Oh, play the music in the living room," and he's got the speakers there, and he can turn it on or off there and play different stuff. It's great. I'd say the smart home stuff, even though I'm a little bit like leery of it, I do have it on its own like subnet and its own network and stuff like that. But that's just me being a little paranoid. But I think smart home is my favorite.
No, I'm the same way. I have thoughts on like the Alexa and the Google Home thing about active versus passive microphones, and that's my tinfoil hat thing.
Yep.
Duncan, back to the modem issue. Duncan in the chat recommends PF Sense is great to look into for that. I'm not familiar with PF Sense.
I have heard of it, but I've never used it, and I know guys at work use it, so I should look into it. Yeah, I've just got this like mini network setup, you know, like a switch and an access point.
Yeah. We have a question here from Dan. If projects or side projects are the main way to impress potential employers, how do you start a project, stay engaged to it, and finish it? I am guilty of starting a new side project and not finishing it. I think a lot of us are.
I mean, me too. I was talking about Raspberry Pis, but there's like one sitting on my shelf right behind the computer there that is just, there's a mess of wires coming out of this box. I had a breadboard. I was trying to do like a NFC thing, and it went nowhere, or it's somewhere, and I don't remember where I left off. I would say choose something that you are interested in to solve. So the Raspberry Pi that's sitting there, someone else asked me, hey, is this possible? And I was really interested in it for about a week, but I wasn't solving the problem for me. So that's, you know, it's hard to stay engaged in that. But if you know, smart home, for example, if you can write a script that will trigger all these things so that you don't need a Google Home, you just press a button, or you know, something like that, and you can write a script that turns on all your devices for you. Well, that might keep you engaged. It would be really cool, and it would be impressive to show off. And if you put it on GitHub and make it like open source, you could also combine your forces with other people to improve it.
Yeah,
But other than that, I don't have a tip.
No, I mean, that's a good point about GitHub as well. Like, I think it's such an important part of the way the world works now, that the earlier you can get familiar and comfortable with it, the better.
Yes.
But let's kind of change gears a little bit, because I was really glad to have you here to ask some stuff a little more specifically about school.
Okay.
That's still pretty fresh in your mind, relatively speaking. So I know in the final term for a lot of our programs, there's a ton of electives. We used to be very, the first few terms are very, very kind of set in stone. You take these courses. Term 3 in BIT, you can go down a programming or a networking stream. Or if you're a madman, you can do both. I know one person who tried that.
Yeah.
But by the kind of the 5th term, you have a lot of choices. Was that the case for you when you were in 5th term? I think you had like
yes.
4 or 5
Yes.
electives. Any ones that stand out in your mind, or ones that maybe you wish you took and you did?
So the way, I don't know if it still works the same way, but the way it worked for my cohort, my term, whatever, towards the end of your co-op term, you'll get an email saying, this is the survey to find out what electives people are interested in. And so they have the list, but they only ran the course if they had enough interest in it, which makes sense. You know, if you got one student, why would you run a course? Now, because of where I did my co-op and the stuff I was exposed to through that, they used Linux and not Windows, and everything was very Windows based at Red River. And then I was like, oh, they have a Linux elective, but there wasn't enough interest to run the course. And I mean, I use it every day, and I figured it out on my own. But that would have been a one that if they do offer it, I would say take it. It'll, even if your job doesn't use Linux, it'll help you at home with any of your side projects, because Linux has lots of free distributions. They're very customizable, and knowing how to run it, you can run your own stuff way easier without all these license fees and Microsoft stuff. What did I take? I took the Android app dev, which was a lot of fun and very interesting. I found, to me, that was the first like very real world experience where I could go, look what I made. Look, you can use it. that one gave me sort of a personal sense of accomplishment. I did web dev and I did like web security. Yeah, web security. But I think they've got a whole new course you can do now in security and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think there's an information security course you can take after graduating.
Yeah. So those are the ones I took. It will depend on what you're interested in, what you see in your co-op. If you want to be a developer, you're going to want to take any of the coding related courses. If you want to be in networking, you'll want to take anything related to networking. And I would also recommend the Linux stuff if you're in networking, because it's not all going to be Cisco, and it will be very helpful to know. I mean, the Cisco stuff does help you in any like configuration of networking devices, because you understand the concept of what you're doing, but the commands might be different. So yeah, I think those were, you take 3 of them, so I think those are my 3. But yeah, if they do Linux, I would say take Linux. Most people will probably hate it. But if you're doing the networking side of things, I would say take the Linux one for sure. But I also don't know if there's any new stuff that might be extra interesting too. So
I think I looked at it quickly. I mean, I know there's a couple people who graduated just last term would know, but I think there's 3 programming ones, 2 database electives, and 2 or 3 networking electives, and web development is in there too. But anyways, I always asking, when you were prepping for co-op, how much technical experience did you have on your resume? Are co-op employers fine with listing school assignments, or should side projects be prioritized?
So I didn't really do it in terms of a project per se. I did, like, because I was completely switching careers. So I had all this soft skills level of job experience. And then for the IT level stuff, it was a lot of, I have these skills which I can create business applications using Java or C# to solve what did we make, like an inventory software or something, like sort of just the style of project, the name of the project was just there as the backup for what the skill is that I had. Because yeah, you know it in Java, or yeah, you know it in C#, but where you end up might code in, I don't know, Python or something like that, or terribly COBOL or something you've never seen. But the fact that you have learned some languages and can solve business problems is the important part. It also depends where you're applying. Some places are very old-fashioned and want a very structured, here are all the things I have done. And some places are like, I remember talking to some guys from Bold, and they're like, yeah, someone submitted a video application to us. Someone just sent us a link to a website, and it ended up being their resume with all their projects on it and stuff like that. So for co-op, you're going to be fairly constrained in how you should apply. But I would focus on the skill and anything you have to back it up, whether it's classwork, assignments, side projects, anything. The way to make yourself stand out, obviously, is if they've gone through 100 resumes that say, I can create a Java program that does inventory. And then you're like, I can create a Java program that controls my whole home. Oh, we're going to talk to this guy. Yeah, so I'd focus on the skills and then whatever you have to back that up.
Nathaniel asked a question, but I mean, you kind of answered it there, and he admitted that. If you're involved with any hiring or interviewing process at Northfield IT, or know people who do, what kind of sets them apart other than kind of, I mean, you said showing off a skill in terms of projects. I'm looking at Northfield, they're actually hiring a couple different roles right now. Have you heard of any kind of rock stars who came in and blew off their socks, and what did they do?
So I'm pretty far removed from that now. I was originally in the service desk, so we would, you know, a lot of the co-ops would come in through the service desk, myself. So we would hear about the new hirees. The team I'm on now is pretty small and pretty specialized, so I don't have a lot to know anything about that. But I do remember talking with the one of the guys who at least used to do the hiring, and he was like, sometimes you have to, as the interviewer, have to ask the right question to find out the top secret skills that someone has, because they're not effective at communicating it. You know, you can go through the whole interview, and then the last thing you're like, oh, what do you do for fun? Well, I've got a huge Bitcoin mining rig that I built that takes up my entire basement. And you're like, oh, okay, so you're not just the guy or the girl who sits there and goes, I have completed all my assignments. You know, or you make websites for your friends or something like that. Those little extra things are the things that make you stand out, especially in a co-op sense, when everyone's resume is going to look roughly the same because you all have the same school experience going in. The side projects will be the thing that makes you stand out. Or even like for me, I a lot of it was my communication skills. I sat down and had a conversation like I was just chatting with some old friends. And so that sort of set me apart in that sense. So even if you don't have side projects, think of the way that you can make yourself stand out in a group of people who are all learning the same thing. I would also recommend, I mean, you can't physically go to any events anymore, but I went to every single event that was out in the community. There's like security conferences, there's dev groups, there's meetup groups. There's like, when I caught wind of something, I went to it and just met people and shook hands. And so that now you have a thing you can be like, oh, hey, I've gone to this conference, I've gone to this. Now a lot of them are online. Some of them are free, some of them are low cost, some of them cost a lot. But you can also meet people through these things and form like a rapport and learn what other companies in the industry are looking for in people by just attending these things. And so if you also have any like volunteer experience, Red River used to run like code camps for high school kids. I volunteered for one of those in one of the early terms. So those kinds of things, if you can talk about them, if you have them on your resume, they'll help you stand out. But in terms of, do I know anyone who's superstar this term? No, I don't know. I didn't. It almost slipped my mind that it was co-op time again.
Well, here's a question, because you mentioned how you've transitioned to a more specialized role. In doing that, did you find or kind of organically meet like a mentor, someone to help develop those specialized skills in a new role? Because I know a lot of people and a lot of places, it's learned by doing, and it's hard if you're by yourself. Did you have any experience with that, with kind of mentors in or out of the workplace?
I'd say it's, I mean, it's sort of like what I do now is, I guess the real world term would be SRE, Site Reliability Engineer, but we call it Performance and Observability. So someone writes the code, someone maintains it and makes sure that everything is running properly at the end, and I am on a team that sits in the middle and makes sure that the people who wrote the code, what the program is supposed to do, I write alerts and run books and stuff on how the service desk can make sure that the application is actually doing what it's supposed to do. So our team lead is like a fantastic mentor. I've learned so much from him, but everyone has also been quite helpful. If you are willing to ask the question and ask for help, where I work is fabulous. People will take the time and make sure you understand what they're talking about. And I've also been in, we've done like group mobbing code sessions where it's like, hey, this is a brand new thing that none of us have ever touched before. 6 of us get on a call together and we all learn it at the same time. You know, somebody might know some of this language, some of that language, some of this language, and we all bring our little unique view to it. And it's not necessarily mentorship, but it's definitely knowledge sharing and growing together. So I think I've lucked out and landed with a really good group of people who make sure to bring you along as they're learning stuff. Everywhere might not be like that. Some places are very siloed. You don't know what the next person is doing. You don't know any of that. And the best I can say is when you don't know something or you need help, ask. And also, I look at Stack Overflow every day. So, if you're sitting there going, man, I have to look up everything, I'm like, I still look up a lot of things.
Oh yeah, no, that's everything I've always heard from senior IT people. They really just get better at Googling things.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
their number one skill. This isn't a question, but I just wanted to read it to you in case you didn't see it. Our resident instructor here, Rianne, says, Kelly was a very memorable student because of her interpersonal skills. I never taught her, but I know of her because she was able to develop strong relationships with her instructors. She actually talked to us instructors. So kind of build off what you were saying. I know that it's been hard for a lot of students going remote, reaching out to instructors. It can be a lot more challenging for certain personality types, and that's been a struggle. I know we mentioned before we got on here that in a lot of ways you've enjoyed being at home for that extra time and the flexibility. I myself, I've enjoyed going to school remotely for the most part, but yeah, it's if you don't have if you're uncomfortable asking questions from instructors, from peers, it can be really tough. And yeah, always comes back to the communication thing, I think.
I honestly, I had a fabulous time at Red River doing this course. I made great friendships with instructors and students and other people in the college. And I can't imagine doing it all remote. So like, I commend you guys for being able to do this, because a huge part of it was being there, being present. There's no dogs barking, kids running around. There's nothing. It's you were in class and that was your task there, and you were focused. And stuff happens at home, and I mean, we're all fighting through it, working, learning, everything, right? It's a whole new way of life, but definitely reach out to your instructors and your classmates. And the way I looked at it with the instructors, if some of you are like scared to reach out, I mean, you're paying their salary. They are there to help you. If you paid for a mechanic and didn't ask him what the noise was in your car, you just dropped it off and didn't, ask about it, you're not going to know much about what was wrong, and he could just give it back to you. Right? So if you do an assignment, you don't understand, you hand it in, you get it back, you don't get any feedback, or then you're not actually learning. You're paying for the service of education. So, instructors are people too. EAs are people too. They all had past lives that they were very much like you. So just talk to people when you need a hand. And if you see someone else struggling, lend a hand. Like, it's the soft skills are way more important. And it sounds like a broken record. And I remember being in like communications and management classes and all those things. And it's like, yeah, sure they are, but they are.
Yeah, I think you really phrased it well when you said education is a service. Because when I was in school before, I saw it more as you paid your money and it was an obstacle to be achieved. That it was almost an adversarial relationship with professors and instructors. But now I see it more like you said, it's a service you've paid for.
Yeah.
And you get out what you put in.
Yep.
And there's a ton of options. Instructors, EAs, students get a free hour of peer tutoring every week if they so wish. I think there's even like professional tutoring services that are covered. I'm not sure about that one, but yeah, that's really really important, and I think it's hard, especially for younger students coming out of high school, because high school, I think it's a little different. I mean, depending where you went, can be challenging. But other than all those things, back to school, what are some resources that you used going through your schooling, like to kind of get you thinking? I've been using a lot of the LinkedIn learning classes we have through Red River. They're all pretty surface level and pretty basic, but in some ways it's nice because they have a really structured way. Like they get you used to using Visual Studio for 2 hours, then you're out of there.
Right.
Did you have anything like that, or even books or sites you frequented during school that helped you?
Well, I remember I still really hate JavaScript. But I think there's like like W3 schools or something like that. I relied heavily on that for like some of the tutorials, the documentation about how you're supposed to use stuff, even for CSS, because even when you know what you're doing with CSS, it's not going to do what you expect.
Alan Simpson, the web dev instructor, he must get some sort of kickback from W3 schools because all of his lectures and his notes have like 10 different links in there to that one site. So something's going on. But no, yeah, that's a good one. I didn't think about that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, we all looked at Stack Overflow. I didn't actually go the networking stream. I did the programming style of courses. But in work now, I use it's like part of the Stack Overflow family of websites. There's something called Server Fault, and it is basically Stack Overflow for server side questions. And my teachers, EAs, and classmates, you know, sometimes you just need that one different perspective that triggers exactly what you need to know. And so when there was office hours or like learning periods or like stuff like that, I would, if I was having any questions, I would attend. I mean, I don't know if they still do that with it all being virtual. Like maybe there's an hour on Friday that you can show up and ask questions and get help. I always showed up if I had a question. And even showing up, you realize that there are 5 other students that have the exact same question. And then somebody else goes, oh, have you thought about using a recursive function? And everyone goes, I'm sorry, what? And then you can all solve your problem at the same time. You didn't even actually have to ask the instructor about your question. Someone just gave you that tiny little snippet of information that lets you change your path. So I definitely used the resources that Red River provided. And, you know, syntax stuff, Stack Overflow's there, the W3 schools is there, stuff like that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's a good point about attending those events. And someone also asked your question too. I won't name her. She's not here though. Anyways, there's a student in my classes. I think she's in every one of my classes this year. She asks every question. She is always asking questions, and she apologizes for it. And I've told her, no, this is great. Everyone has the same question. You're getting out there in front of everyone. And if you've had a class with her, you probably know who I'm talking about. But she thinks it's a bad thing, and I think it's a wonderful thing that she does that. So it's 2:46. Why don't, Udavir, I know you're recording. Could you turn off the recording if we have any kind of special questions? We'll give it